we're now up to the resolution to...
Have we done 11?
Yes.
Okay.
To exclude the public, and we've got Monica Morona and Mina Nada to remain for item 22.
Yeah. So I understand that they want to deal with the item 20, the community resilience part.
View that we deal with the Community Resilience Partnership Fund paper in the open meeting. If that's a general view, we'll just take it out of the resolution and we'll just go on to it.
We're all happy with that, Leanne, just so long as staff have just gone through there to make sure that nothing
staff have gone
compromises them.
through
If they're
there,
comfortable, we're fine.
But I think people should just be careful in terms of questions breaking into privacy issues. In future, we'll workshop them before we come to a public consideration. So it's just been a process that has followed a pattern rather than being considered. So could we go to item 20 in the PX agenda? It's not going into the PX agenda, but that's where you'll find it. And could staff come to the table for that one?
Yeah, we've just been told that Andrew and I need to take no part in the housing first.
Why?
Well, I was a bit nonplussed as well, but
Excuse me, why?
Because
why?
Because Otautahi is one of the joint providers of housing first in the city.
But so's the council. Are we all conflicted?
Well, that's if you're saying it's not the connection that I'm thinking it might be, then that's fine.
No. I think. I mean, it's probably the most controversial of the elements, and it's. I just don't think that there's a conflict there. I just think. I mean,
we've taken part in it up to now.
So you don't have to accept his advice. You don't have to accept his advice.
No, exactly.
Okay. Can just people note that we have two councillors that are on the board of the Otautahi Community Housing Trust. I don't personally think that makes any issue in relation to the Housing First proposal, which is a matter in relation to a funding allocation rather than something that has been sought. So, okay, so I think that probably rather than going to move these en bloc, I just want to establish that people ask the questions that they want to ask on the individual elements of it, so that we can then ascertain how we might do this. And there are two questions in relation to the Housing First proposal that I have. The first one is what was this? Was the Christchurch Housing First collaboration, I suppose I'll call it, did they ask the council to make a financial contribution to it? And the second is, does the government's announcement in relation to a significant amount of additional money for the Housing First model enable us to reconsider the amount that we might contribute?
My understanding is that yes, they did ask council to fund this, and my understanding is also that no, the government's contribution is to add more to the government side of numbers of people that they will house, where this bit of the project is more about the social connection, and also working with the people that are on the streets as well. The officer working on this isn't here, so they can't answer that question, but that's our understanding from following up.
No, that's fine. That clears that up for me. Sarah?
Thank you. I've got a process question, and I think this has been raised before. I just need an answer to it. So the committee resolution to seek Community Resilience Partnership funding was on the 22nd of February, and a week later the council resolved to ask staff to report to the committee on all, council resolution was on the 22nd of February, which asked staff to report on all council and external funding sources, and the report was already written that was going to the committee, which was there on the 4th of April, and it only referenced potential council sources of funding, and it referenced an earlier committee resolution and didn't reference the council resolution at all. So has the council resolution to look at external sources of funding for this been fulfilled, or are we doing this ahead of that work?
It's our understanding that there's been a conversation with the Rata Foundation, but apart from that, there has not been any other investigations.
So the council resolution, with staff are requested to report to the committee on all council and external options to help fund the proposed initiatives. And then a week later, the committee decided on a council one without looking at external ones. Are we able to look at external before it comes back?
Yes, we could do that.
Yeah.
We're able if you instruct us to do that.
Yeah, I mean, that was the council resolution of the 22nd of February.
Sorry, I've kind of...
I sent an email through last night,
No.
and I raised it at an informal a couple of weeks ago.
I haven't had
while
time
you were
to
away.
read all my emails.
Yeah.
Dion, Andrew, Phil, Mike.
Yeah, so my question's around who's actually getting the money for the Housing First one. In the report, it says the mission, the Christchurch Methodist mission will be the lead contractor in the program. The mission will be the employer of the community development worker, blah blah blah. Then it just full stop. Te Whare Roimata has been working in inner city east for over 20 years. Te Whare Roimata. So I don't get what Te Whare Roimata is doing, because it says the mission's getting the money.
They're one of the partners of this initiative. The fund holder for this grant, if it's successful, will be the City Mission, because that's where the workers will be based.
It just reads in here as though that bit's just been copied and pasted and stuck in there. I don't see any other reference to what they're specifically doing. So I'm just wanting to understand what their involvement will be, what the mission's involvement will be, and how to actually, who's actually doing what.
The mission will be the base and the employer of the manager and the two workers that are in this, and so they will be the fund holder. I'm not sure, Jim might be able to talk about the other partners that are involved in this.
Yeah, I just want to know if that's...
Jenny, can you shed any light on that?
If that sentence has just been...
Paul could probably answer your question, Councillor.
There's something missing there.
Certainly Te Whare...
it's on page 184 for anybody that wants to look at it.
Sorry,
Councillor. It's on page 184 of the report.
Yeah. Certainly Te Whare anticipate them being involved in the Champions Group, and they're part of the wider network of agencies and organisations involved in the Housing First project. That's the core 4 organisations involved, or the lead organisations will be in touch with and working with.
Yeah, but I'm still within this report. I'm just trying to understand. It's it almost as if the mission has been written there, and then all of a sudden Te Whare Roimata has been replaced in the sentence structures with the mission, or instead of the mission, and I'm just confused. If it's at the top of page 185.
Yeah.
If you know if you read it, you'll sort of see what I mean. And I'm just really confused because it's not very clear who's actually running what and what's actually happening.
Oh, okay, sure. Yeah, I mean, in terms of...
if we're granted $300,000, this needs to be very clear.
Sure. No, it's most definitely through the mission as the lead organisation involved in the Housing First Partnership. I'm sorry, I can't really comment on exactly why the sentence structure is like that. In the report, I think it's just to somehow allude or make reference that other organisations involved, those who work very closely on the street in the East.
Yeah. I'm still quite confused at the...
I'm just reading it, and it says that the lead contractor is the Methodist Mission, and that they will be the employer of the community development worker and peer support worker and provide supervision, training and support. But Te Whare Roimata will be well able to provide day-to-day support and guidance for the workers. So it seems to me that the way it's structured is to identify that they'll be working alongside Te Whare Roimata.
It's just not very clear at all.
No, I agree that the sentence structure is not very good, but it's... I think that's what it means.
No, but
specific contextual.
Yeah, Andrew?
This is quite unusual.
Oh.
It's across NGOs, where one of the NGO is the fund holder for collaboration across a number of NGOs, rather than trying to spread out the money across everyone. One's a fund holder, but all the partners involved in the direction and management of the worker. Usually funders in a partnership like MSD require one fund holder. We often do as well.
Yep. Andrew?
Thank you. So the funding that we're providing that's coming from this fund, that would provide for the employment of the full-time community development worker, 2 part-time peer workers, peer working capacity building, and so on, as detailed on the page in our report. Presumably that is designed to reflect our role as a partner in this programme. That's what we've agreed to contribute to the programme.
Yes, that's correct. So, I mean, as the proposal notes, it's working in the whole community development and community connections area to help sustain the tenancies. So that's the additional extra value that council can provide in addition to the core Housing First proposal. I mean, certainly the evidence overseas shows the more that you can work with folks to reinforce, develop and sustain those community connections within the neighbourhood, the better chance of success in the long run you have through a Housing First.
Just following on from that, if additional funding were able to be sourced from another provider such as RATA or some other funder, that funding wouldn't necessarily be applied to this aspect of the programme. My understanding is the more funding that's available to the programme, and I think this was reflected in the answer around government funding, the more funding that's applied to the programme as a whole, the more homeless people can benefit from the programme.
It's still 50, although I think there's an argument to be made that you would have a greater throughput or access if you can sustain people in their tenancies within their communities. So in other words, they'll need less long-term support through the Housing First partnership work.
Leon, perhaps Paul just might comment about what I'm going to say is correct, because just in relation to what the committee were asked to do in the beginning of April, the report there looks at the funding sources as was requested and at the different council funding sources, and the decision of the committee was to support the Community Resilience Partnership Fund. There is reference in the report too, though, to saying there's no known sources of external funding that council could have access to support the program, but the partnership could apply independently to sources such as Rata Foundation has been mentioned. So the committee were aware of possible sources, but that what the report really said, I guess implied, was that council wouldn't usually apply for funding on behalf of other agencies. I'm just making that comment, and Paul might bear me out as to whether or not the report that I'm reading is accurate.
I'll need to defer to colleagues on that one who are more closely associated with writing the report.
Yeah, I think that it's not inconsistent with the point though that Sarah's raised, which is that that we were to look to external ones. And so you're saying that external sources were looked for, but that we couldn't...
No, I'm saying that there weren't known sources of external funding that council could access.
Yes, but I don't know that that was the intention of the resolution on the 22nd of February. I think the intention of the resolution of the 22nd of February was in the spirit of the collaboration of the actual Housing First thing itself, was to look for external sources of funding to support it in partnership with the council. So, but I'm getting some advice on that. Mike? Mike?
The 300...
No, don't.
The 300,000, is that anticipated to be exhausted within that year? So they'll be all used up within the year?
The actual initial request was for, I think, 600,000 over 3 years, but the funding for this fund was available for the 2 years. So I split it over the 2 years with an option to extend it if need be, the term of the grant.
Yeah, but do you think that therefore they'll only use 200,000 and therefore keep 100,000 aside, or will the whole 300,000 be used up in year one?
I don't know, sorry.
And does this fund allow therefore for that money to be carried over years, or?
Yes, it does. There is a process in place where they can apply to have it rolled forward. Yeah.
Vicky.
So I have a problem that that we house 50 people without this, and then at the end of the time of adding another 300,000 per annum, we still house 50 people. So in terms of the biggest, best use of housing first, I would have thought it was housing people. And we know that there is a key worker and other people who wrap round to provide the service that people need. So I'm struggling with 300,000 for effectively 2 full-time community workers, which seems an extremely well-paid community workers. I would much rather that we said, and I'm very happy that we do everything we can about homeless, because at the moment we're dealing with it through the Mayor's Welfare Fund. So I'm delighted that we do whatever, but I'm just wondering, wouldn't it be better if we just said, well, instead of housing 50, which doesn't actually solve the problem per year, we house 75 per year with the, and aim at that, but not worry about the fact that it's going into 1 full-time and 2 part-time community workers. Could we just be a bit more open about it, because our aim is to house those people who are homeless? But the community relationship thing, like 2 community workers, 2 full-time community workers for what will be effectively people who already have a wraparound service, already have the support, and then linking them to community organisations is 1 to 12, 1 to 25. I'm just wondering if there's another way that we could put the money in, achieve a better outcome for the big issue of homelessness that we face.
Sure. Well, I guess through you, Ms. Mayor, we've got 2. Ms. Mayor, Ms. Chair.
No. They're just laughing because they know I hate Madam Mayor, you know. So, so I thought Ms. Mayor was a sort of a kind of a step up from there.
A 2-part answer, if I may, through me, and then I think my colleague Jenny Huey can certainly add some further value around how the money can be best spent and what other value can be added in terms of addressing some other related issues as well. My point would be that Housing First is not housing only, and I think Councillor Buck alludes to that in terms of the additional support services that are required to help them, which is why we're promoting here or putting the idea to you of the community connections community development work. So it's not just about putting a person in a house, there's a whole pile of other work related to that. In terms of the 50 people through the program, that's what the Housing Partnership secure the funding for through their MSD contract. So notwithstanding the additional funding that's been made in this year's budget, that's something for the future and is not specifically part of this partnership proposal. The government has announced part of their funding in the budget is for the evaluation and monitoring of the program. So one imagines that they'll want to see this in action for the 13 to 12 months before they continue and expand it. And through you, Ms. Mayor, perhaps we can ask Jenny to answer that question as well through her work.
Well, good morning, everyone. I just wanted to maybe talk about a way in which we might be able to add some extra value to this Housing First project by looking more broadly across the other collaborations that the council's involved in at the moment. And as a number of councillors have been actively involved in both the Housing First, the sex-based street worker project, and more relevantly the inner city street solutions project, which is working around primarily people who are begging in the inner city. Now that group has many of the same stakeholders, and we've been actively seeking funding from other sources through the people in the partnership, who are the City Mission, not so much the Methodist Mission. They've been more on the periphery, although they've known what's happening. So we think there's a real need for very close connections between Housing First and the Inner City Street Solutions project. So, as you know, some people in the inner city who are begging are homeless and some aren't homeless, but they all have similar issues. So there has been a project going on which is no longer funded, working with the people who are directly in the streets, and the partners to the Inner City Solutions project would really like to see a really, really strong connection with Housing First, with these community development workers. So we're wondering if a dual role could be developed between the workers who could still be based in the Housing First model, but who could work directly on the Inner City Street Solutions project. And there has been some quite lengthy discussion around that, so maybe that's a way forward.
Okay. Yanni?
Thanks. I was just a little bit unclear. There was an announcement on the 4th of May, 100 million to tackle homelessness, and it said that the government had boosted funding for ongoing services for more than 900 households in the Housing First program in Auckland, Christchurch, Tauranga, Hamilton, Wellington, Lower Hutt, and that was 20.5 million. The government then goes on, I mean, there's a number of quotes around the importance of Housing First, and it says Housing First provides housing with no readiness conditions. It also provides wraparound support and services for as long as needed to help people stay in house and improve lives. So 2 questions from that. One, are we aware of what the Minister's announcement means in terms of our program, given that...
Sorry, that was the very first question I asked, and it was answered, which
well,
is...
I wasn't, sorry, clear what the answer was.
Okay, the answer, well, I heard the advice that we received, which was that it was to extend the number of people that were able to be housed under the program, that it wasn't for, and that's not what this proposal's for.
What's the new number?
Well, they won't have allocated yet, will they?
It's evolving, as I understand it. MSD staff have been involved in the street begging project, and they're telling us that's an evolving situation, but they're still saying they support a solution around community development workers working to build capacity with these people, and they especially won't be directly involved with people who are begging, who aren't necessarily homeless. But it's an evolving situation at the moment within the government.
So we had a meeting with the Minister. I don't know what happened there. There's a new budget announcement for more money for Housing First, but we don't know how many numbers we're getting, and yet we're being asked to make a significant contribution to one of the principles of it.
Sure. As we've answered before, I mean, the existing contract is for 50 people per year, so it's the existing contract that the Housing First Partnership here have with the government. Yes, in Budget 2018 it states boost funding for existing services, support more than 900 households in the Housing First program, Auckland, Christchurch, Tauranga, Wellington and the Hutt. So they've allocated 20 million for that. So that's in the future.
A bit like Councillor Buck's point, if we're going to agree to this funding today, then can we actually go back to government and say, it's great you've made this announcement, we're happy to contribute on the basis that you provide X amount more spaces given that you've announced it, so that we've actually got a sort of partnership around extending the numbers that this will go to.
one imagines that we can make that point in the future of government. Yes, we understand you've budgeted further funds. We would like to see the service further rolled out here. 50 isn't dealing with the total number. There's a higher demand. So yes, of course we can continue those discussions.
Dion?
I just wanted to see if you guys are aware of the job that's currently advertised on the Christchurch City Council for the Marginalised Community Liaison person for the Christchurch Central Library.
Yes, I'm aware of it. The libraries have been involved in the inner city street collaboration project right from the start, and we've been liaising with them about that
Yeah, so the job is a full-time one in the library, build relationships with marginalised and homeless communities and the organisations supporting them. Here's a plug for the 18 people watching YouTube. If you want a job, that you've got till the end of the day to apply. $50,000 to $68,000 salary, which is fantastic. But what is this? You know, I just want to know that there's not going to be any sort of double up of what we're actually doing, because I mean these homeless people are marginalised. I don't want them to be going over there and over there and over there and feel like they're being pulled between Arthur and Martha. You know, they need a single point of entry where they're actually going to be able to find what they need and then actually get the support they need. So, are we doubling up here, or?
Well, as far as my conversations have taken place with other staff who are involved in this, we wouldn't be doubling up. The library service is about facilitating people within the libraries and the programs, making sure they've got programs aligned to people who are in that particular community who would be using the library service. So it's definitely not a doubling up.
Phil, then Anne.
Thank you. My questions really is around the scope that Ministry of Development will be funding. Just for clarity, and you may have indicated this before, but my understanding is that in fact the whole community connectivity part, which the report refers to, and I guess that community development part for people who are homeless who have virtually no other connections apart from their own group with homeless people, that in fact that's the part that in fact the report is asking for funding from council, and it's particularly because that's not covered by the contract with MSD.
Yeah, that's true. I think John's got a suggestion as a way forward here.
Yeah, answer the question, Jenny, and I'll go through the chair.
Yes. Well, that is absolutely correct. It's about capacity building and looking after people and assisting them to make connections. The exactly same work that we need to work with people from the bottom up, with the people who are homeless and the people who are in the street and the people who are involved in various other activities around the city.
I'm just going to just sound people out here because, you know, we've got a very full agenda today and a number of other events that we have to attend to. So what I would suggest is that we park this this proposal and deal with the rest of the paper if people are quite comfortable with that, and we'll get a further report back on this item for the next meeting. Okay? So on that basis, is somebody prepared to move the balance of the recommendations? Sarah, seconded by Mike. So I'll put that motion. All those in favour say aye. Those opposed say no. That's carried. And we'll get a report back on that item. So